Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to this special broadcast. Very unusual for us to come on a Tuesday, but we decided to do so because of the convenience of the panelists we have today. We are back to our famous and interesting topic, mental health in the African immigrant community. Tonight, we have a great array of gentlemen and ladies. They are from across, some in the UK, some in the US, and I'm sure many are watching from across the world. I'm very humbled to be hosting the show this night with somebody who participated in this program 2 weeks ago to talk about the same topic. It was 25 push-ups for 25 days. We had Dr. Lauren Niba who shared her experience, and it was quite an experience and encounter for me. We are talking about mental health because unfortunately, it is one of those areas within our immigrant communities that nobody wants to talk about. There is a lot of stress, a lot of trauma in our community, and how that is handled. Many people, when people share their experiences, you are just wondering how they are still walking around. That is something that we all need to be educated about. We all need to talk about it. And that is why, having seen these gentlemen and lady take up the challenge over the last 40 days to do 25 push-ups for 25 days, not just in order to improve on their body looks, but in order to raise awareness about this issue, mental health, especially within our African community. I thought it fitting that this is a conversation that needs to continue happening. Those who watched the first broadcast, some people wrote to me and said this is something we need to continue talking about. I put out on a couple of forums this evening saying it's a Shesa night. Yes, it's a Shesa night. And Shesa stands for Sacred Heart Ex-Students Association, but this is not a Shesa event. It just happens that on my class forum, class of 84, there are at least 4 of the brothers who were engaged in this. I know my friend Pius said it's a low-hanging fruit that I could get my classmates to come and talk about their experience. But I think I remain very, very grateful that they were able to talk about, they're able to say, yes, this is something I would like to come share my experience, and together we can wrap our hands, our heads, our minds around it and see how to elevate the conversations and take it beyond just Facebook and the conversations and take it to that next level. That is why we are here this evening. We are very grateful that the people in the UK, my friends in the UK, K-Boy and BK, they are going to introduce themselves. I'm just using that because that's what I see on the screen. To be up at 11 p.m., I'm sure it's past their bedtime. They're supposed to be sleeping now. And Pius just left work too and has another program coming up shortly after this. And above all, Dr. Lauren Niba graciously and gracefully accepted to co-host this program, so I don't talk much this evening. I can drink a lot of water so that I can clean my system since I cannot do the push-ups. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. And I'll ask Dr. Lauren to say a few words and we go around for the gentlemen to introduce themselves.
Absolutely. And thank you, Lambert, for that introduction. And most especially, thank you for having me back on the show. So as Lambert shared, I was nominated for this push-ups challenge. And when I was nominated, I was terrified because I had never done 25 push-ups in a day, right? I think my max was 8 or 10 or something. But being nominated for the challenge really opened a new door for me. And I started exploring this whole space of mental health and really mental health awareness, particularly within our community. And what I found out was that, first of all, it's a whole spectrum, right? So it goes all the way from just simple anxiety, when people worry about, things that are coming, all the way to post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, right? Which might even just be situational depression. But when I was on the show the last time, one of the things that I had highlighted to Lambert, and that's very common in the community in particular, is, are the people that sometimes we think don't have problems, right? So a lot of times, even people who have power or they may have material things may be going through mental trauma but they cannot talk about it. And so having a visual way and being able to raise awareness is very, very important. Obviously, this particular challenge started out in Australia, where it really was targeting suicide, right? Suicide and self-harm, which is the ultimate extreme when people take their own lives, or they engage in self-destructive behavior like cutting and some of this really extreme things that people do. So it started from there. But I think, and this was in 2018, I think it spread all over the world because mental health is something that is so common. And I think especially in the Black communities everywhere, the African diaspora, because we tend to be very communal, there's a whole host of reasons why we don't talk about it. It's very critical for us to have programs like this. I would love to learn this evening from the panelists, seeing what the experience has been for them personally. But most importantly, how we start generating these conversations within our own community. So it is a pleasure to be back here. As I shared the last time when I was here, I finished the challenge, but I made the decision to continue doing the push-ups and to continue to stay involved as an advocate and a champion for mental health. So I'm looking forward to speaking with the panelists tonight.
Thank you very much, K-Boy.
Hello, good evening, everybody. Thank you, Lambert, for having me on the show. To be honest, when you contacted me, I was pretty surprised as to why, what this was all about. I had absolutely no idea, even when you mentioned that you had a show, because to be fair, this is the very first time I knew about you having a show, let alone being invited to participate in it. My name, yeah, it's well, people call me K-Boy. Yeah, it's Kenneth Tungwen. So, and basically, the reason I got into this campaign is pretty simple. I believe it was BK who tagged me in one of the videos he did. So I wasn't even aware of anything like that going on, and I'm not one for participating in these kind of things. And but that really struck a chord, because the way I see it is that's the one subject or one issue which it has universal appeal. It has no, it spares nobody. It's almost like COVID, you know. And if he's gonna get you, he's gonna get you, regardless of your status, regardless of your race, regardless of your financial capability or anything like that. So, and there are lots and lots of symptoms and manifestations of these conditions in the human race. So when I had that opportunity when I was tagged, and I looked at it, I thought, you know what, I might as well give it a go. It's not about the push-ups for me, because obviously I do tend to get a bit active sports-wise as well. So, but just being able to do something to actually continue the conversation and spread the word, raise awareness, is what it was all about. And to be honest, I had absolutely no idea, no education behind this topic. So unfortunately, getting into it, I didn't really have much information to share about it. But my belief was that participating in it and then letting more and more people, and depending on how and the way we are all connected in the world today, there are definitely resourceful people who are going to come along who will have a bit more to share and their experiences, and it will enable and help others be able to actually identify, deal with the situations, identify them, support, and also try and be there for each other.
Thank you very much, K-Boy. And so in your situation, you were tagged. It's important to take note that he was only tagged on something and he took it and ran with it. Lauren was nominated. It looks like one of those nominations done by presidents of countries where they nominate you for something and you go and you run with it. Pius, welcome to the show. How about you?
Thanks, Lambert, for inviting me to be part of your panelists today. It's really great to meet Lauren, BK, and my good friend Kenneth, and you, of course. We talk from time to time, but also to be here on a great cause like the one that we're talking about today. I got nominated by Honorin Genagul from Germany. It's strange. I mean, I could see from my Facebook feed that this was going on at Sin, and I kept seeing the people that were doing it, and I knew quite a bit of them, and I was like, surely one of those days I'm gonna get a nomination. And I was thinking that and counting down. 9 days today, I woke up to a text that, hey, I'm nominating you to do this push-ups. Now, and that's why I'm here. So I decided to take the challenge. My name is Pius, by the way, Pius Hour, and I'm an investment advisor representative living and working out of Texas. I have seen family members in the last year and a half. 2 people close to me have fallen because of post-traumatic post-traumatic stress disorder, not really, but some kind of stress, depression, and mental challenge. One of them I spent time with in DC years ago, and I was actually part of a really, really bad episode of the mental issues they were having. And so it was a time for me to contribute to something that would bring light to it. My in-law took his own life a year and a half ago in the Maryland, DC area, and that was probably from the post-traumatic, because he was a veteran and stuff like that. So it's closer to home than we would think. And I'm just here to do my little bit as a happy-go-lucky guy to bring some awareness to this, so that it could be a topic of discussion so we can identify it early, we can talk about it, it's not a taboo issue, and we can find treatments or therapies that can help people deal with it.
Thank you very much, and I very much appreciate that personal angle, that personal touch that you give to it. It's very close. In fact, most of us may not know it. We may actually have people in our immediate family that are suffering from these issues, and we are not highlighting them as we should. So I really want to, it's a good tag that you have on that we can really rotate around. Not to take away from you, BK. Right on.
So where do I start? I guess the rest of you are really tough acts to follow. You've pretty much covered everything there is to say. I'll piggyback on what a lot of you have said, but why don't we start with an introduction? So my friends call me BK, stands for Banseka Kenneth. I'm not particularly big on identities. I just see, I'm not particularly big on name tags, because from my perspective, it is one of the things that is by and large responsible for some of the crises that we have, because we lay a lot of emphasis sometimes on who we are, who society expects us to be, and that in and of itself can be counterproductive. So I was nominated into this what I'd call noble cause by Binmay Ben. It's a very good friend of mine, and initially I resisted because I wasn't quite sure I was going to find 25 people who were going to be interested. But then I thought about it, and I realized this was something that is really close to my heart. I run an initiative which I call a service called Mindset Boulevard, and it's really about getting to know the self. So get to know yourself, be yourself, love yourself. And it is something I guess we take for granted because it hits at the very core of identity, which is what this all comes down to. I'd like to piggyback on what Lorraine said regarding the fact that, and I think Kenneth as well highlighted on it. So we would realize that depression doesn't know color, it doesn't understand creed, it doesn't respect culture. It cuts across the board. It has no respect for age either. Can be very elusive. So you have people who are very successful, in fact, extremely successful, as Lorraine highlighted, and yet they fall prey to this. So you start asking your question, what's going on? So again, we realize that people succeed into their own demise. And these are the things that raise my eyebrows and get me extremely interested. And I ask myself, what can I do to be a part of a cause that creates a platform where people can feel free to be themselves, talk about their challenges, what it is they are going through. And obviously, if you're going to talk about what you're going through, you need to start by knowing who you are. So understanding who you are, that's where it starts, because when you know who you are, then you know what identity to pursue and you know who to become downstream. Now, we would notice again that it is extremely elusive, yet when you look at those who suffer from these conditions, they all have one thing in common. You don't see any depressed person who's happy, nor would you see one who feels truly loved. So there is an intimate connection. It is inextricably linked to happiness and love. And I'd rather not talk about happiness, I'd rather talk about fulfillment. And so these are the things that I look at and I ask myself, how do we get ourselves to a place where we create this platform for people to feel free enough to expose, to explore, to be their true selves and not be that which society expects of them? And I'm sure we all know, we know we live in a society where it is hard to be your real self. We come from backgrounds where the family, it could be the family, it could be friends, it could be just the pressures around, force us to become things, persons, or people we did not really intend to be, but we do that to just fit a mold. And these are the things that got me to a place where I decided I was going to start this initiative. So I was doing something along these lines anyway, through Mindset Boulevard, putting out inspirational quotes on a daily basis. And it's a service that I really would love. It's a service I want to take to higher heights in a sensitization form. I also get to interact with people by and large, and I realize that across the board, it is the same story. People do not really know who they are. They don't know how to go about finding out who they are. They just try and fail and hope that by some stroke of luck, they will identify themselves. So for me, it's about, again, creating that environment where people can actually be themselves, discover their truth, and lead fulfilling lives. And I think I'll leave it at that for now, and we can pick up as the conversation goes on.
That is a lot. I mean, it is. We could end the show at this point. We really have to. I mean, just think about it for a second. And I think that I could also take back what I just said because of the tag, isn't it? There's a problem in our community whereby I want to identify as being a Shesan because being a Shesan has a certain label, isn't it? And because of that label, I'm trying to force myself into that mold. I really do not know who I am as a person, the value that I have as a person, beyond where I come from, beyond what school I went to, isn't it? And celebrating ourselves. I mean, we can talk about this. K-Boy, so what has the experience been this far? 25 push-ups, you're on day 12, you said?
Day 13 today. And,
day 13. So how's 13 days, what has been the experience? And
the experience for me, it's been quite exhilarating. I mean, I get up every day. I really look forward to doing it. That's the first thing. And the driving force for me, again, is just that is the nobility around the cause. Because I think there is a lot more that can be done. And in terms of the information and spreading the word, for people to be more aware, more educated, they need to actually have the opportunity to inquire. Because while I've been doing this, I have been also picking up material, every now and then researching one or two things, to find out a bit more about certain topics. I haven't got a whole lot of time dedicated to that in particular because of other issues. However, I'm dedicated to actually reading up more and more every day, even if I can just find out one new thing about it. Because for me, I need to be able to, first of all, identify who is or the symptoms when I see them. And a lot of times, I think it bypasses us without noticing. We as humans, we are very, very prone to just blame people, put people in boxes or something, or just stereotype or label people without necessarily understanding, the origin or where they've come from. So there are a lot of things which I really need to. For me, it's a journey that I need to understand. And like Kenneth said, sorry, I have to make reference to K-Boy because I call him K-Boy just like he calls me K-Boy. We are both Kenneth anyway, so I think that is excusable. So when I make reference to K-Boy, it's not about me, it's about the other K-Boy on the show. So in the course of this as well, I like K-Boy was saying, it's about self-discovery, knowing thyself. And when you know thyself, then you begin to explore a bit more aspects or more facets about your behavior, about you go down to your history, it goes down to a lot of things, and how you relate to people, how you treat or how you entertain other people around you, or the level of tolerance and your level of interactions and all that. It's quite deep. It's quite deep. It's a massive area, and because it's easier for us to identify things on the physical side. We don't tend to what is hidden beneath our skin. We don't really know much about unless we go get it x-rayed somehow. So for something like mental health, I think conversations, when you have conversations and experts who can actually give opinions about certain patterns or certain traits that they notice, it is very helpful. It's very, very helpful.
Yeah.
So it will go a long way if this campaign were sustained. And it's not about the push-ups. It's not about the push-ups. The push-ups is just it's just an exercise to say, okay, I'm doing something, but why are you doing it? You have to go down to the reason, fundamental reason why you took it up, and why you're doing it, and why you intend it. Where do where you want to take it to?
Yeah. I mean, I love the fact that we sort of went to this whole idea of identity and really mindset right away, right? So clearly, Shesans are very smart people, because you guys kind of honed in on really sort of the underlying and most fundamental part of it. And interestingly, the last time I was on the show with Lambert, we actually spent a lot of time just talking about the fact that as a community, we don't do enough self-exploration, right? Because you really cannot get to know yourself without really looking within yourself, of really exploring. So I guess I have a question for pretty much everyone on the panel, and I did want to start with you, BK, right, the other K-Boy. You've clearly, identified this to the point where it's not just about yourself, but you actually have programs where you're helping other people. So what was the light bulb for you? What is it that first of all, how did you get to the point where you realized that a lot of the external manifestations of trauma that we see and mental unwellness and lack of fulfillment, I think you used the word fulfillment, is really because of identity, so how did you get to that point? And then, how do you see that at more of a community-wide level, and then I'd love to have everyone else, sort of share their thoughts on that.
Sure. So for me, it was pretty much different pieces of the puzzle coming together to form a maze that I was completely oblivious of. So growing up, I realized I was this entity that people just gravitated towards. People felt free talking to me, and they'd open up within a very short space of time, and it really did not matter what problem or what challenge they threw at me. I seemed to have something to say. And at the end of that conversation, they'd feel fulfilled, or they'd feel like they were energized and they could go out, spread their wings and fly. But of course, I took it for granted the whole while. And I thought to myself, hey, I'm nothing special. So if I could do this, surely anyone else could do it. But then going through life, I realized there was something special. Well, I don't know whether to call it special, but I thought there was something special about it. Now, the particular thing that made me realize that I don't want to use the word calling, or I'm going to use the word calling very cautiously. Now, we all find ourselves in situations where, I mean, in the household, we find ourselves in a situation of conflict. And there are times when those who are involved in this conflict are looking for alibis in anyone and everyone around them. So we're looking to team up with someone and serve and use our team as a whip against the other person. Now, I happen to have been locked in this kind of situation, and I realized I coped with it. I did not cope with it at all. In fact, I thrived in it.
Wow.
I became, yeah, exactly. So, and that's what I say about life and the experiences, the curveballs that it throws at us. That's what life does. It is going to force us to become who we really and truly are. As long as we have the nerve to look at whatever challenge we're facing squarely in the eye. So in my particular regard, what was it about? So you find yourself in a conflict situation where you're locked between two lions or two elephants, and you know what they say: when two elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. In this case, it is the grass that thrives. Don't ask me how it happened. So there's this role reversal of sorts when you talk about spirituality. If you want to get, give. If you want to willpower and authority, serve. So it all goes counter to the grain. Now, how did this happen? So you have these two giants trying to canvas for my support against each other. When each one presented, I would ask them questions, soul-searching questions that would leave them thinking I was supporting the other party. And the other party would come to me with the same narrative or rhetoric, and I'd ask them the same soul-searching questions, and they would accuse me of having been contaminated by the other party, and that's the way it usually is. So you have two people who think I'm supporting the other party, and both think I'm the enemy, and it takes them a period of about a year to realize that I was just ruthlessly objective. So in this country, you would call it abuse. I said I found my calling through that experience, because obviously I had the option to become the typical lunatic or to become the typical loser because of the chaos that was around me. But no, it actually
dysfunction. Yeah.
Absolutely. But instead, it actually showed me something that I carried on the inside, and I did this seamlessly. It's not like I had to work hard. I didn't even have to think hard about it. So fast track to my adulthood. Much later, a wife and two kids later, I realized I was doing this on a much larger scale, dealing with people who were suffering domestic abuse. And when I say domestic abuse, I mean chronic domestic abuse, the worst flavor of its kind. And I could still walk in there and empower them in ways that they themselves would come out feeling extremely elated after a couple of sessions. So we're not talking about 6 months. They would find themselves enough to trust in themselves, to be themselves, and to, in a loving and respectful way, come out of their demise. Dealt with people who were stressed, dealt with people who thought they were suffering from all kinds of, again, these labels. Call it bipolar, call it multiple personality disorders, which I really, by and large, see these as coping mechanisms. As you already clearly articulated or highlighted, it moves. There's a certain trend. So we move from a position of pain, where we are in pain, and we all go through pain. It is not optional. We will all go through pain because that's the way we grow. Then we meet and greet stress, distress, and duress. From there, we move into a place of suffering. So again, suffering is that place where we don't really think we can do anything about what is happening. We resign ourselves to a situation and it becomes our lives. We say to ourselves, oh, well, this is my cross. I'm just going to have to carry it. That's when the joy starts seeping out of you. Now, at this stage, we can still perform a few physical activities, the thing that would usually keep us alive, get the adrenaline flowing or get the endorphins going. It becomes a problem when we slowly slip into depression, because your depressive state is the one thing that's going to pull you away from your life source, being your friends, that activity that you used to do that revitalized you. It could have been jogging, it could have been socializing, it could have been bungee jumping, skydiving, whatever it is. We cut ourselves free from all these physical activities that keep us alive, because there's absolutely no incentive to do so. Now we have to cope just with the mind. This is where it becomes spiritual, because if we can't cope physically anymore, we start looking for ways of coping spiritually. And the example I usually would give is that of Trevor Noah. He can impersonate different dignitaries, and when he talks about them, it's almost as if he tunes into their vibration and literally becomes them. We laud and applaud him and we pay him for it. But when someone in a state of duress and distress does the exact same thing, when they perceive danger, whether it is real or imagined, they actually morph into something else, and they can create a completely different personality, different from the one that we know, but that personality is assigned to take care of business when danger has been identified. What do we do with as a coping mechanism? Absolutely. And it's the different levels and extents to which they morph into these different energies that we then catalog, give all these names to, call it bipolar, call it schizophrenia, call it what else? There's bipolar, okay, multiple personality disorders, and you name it, schizophrenia. Well, now when they get into that state, what do? We put a label, put a tag on their heads, and they become commercialized. And I'm not saying that drugs are a bad thing. I mean, allopathic medicine is just that. It takes care of symptoms, and that's what it's working with. So it takes your blood chemistry, and it takes a reading, and if there's an imbalance, it tries to get the homeostasis back to what it should be, to its standard equilibrium, by introducing drugs to balance up. It doesn't necessarily look at the organ or the organism or that personality from a holistic point. See, because that distress indicates that there is lack of ease, which is disease. But then that state of distress is a direct function of the state of mind, because that is what gets imprinted or printed on the body. Whatever it is we see, we're going through stressful situations in the mind, it gets printed in the body or in the body, which I look at it from the perspective of trapped energy, and that energy pretty much is what we call disease. So if we can look at this pretty much from that holistic perspective, what is going on in the mind, the think, feel, act cycle, then we take care of the problem, as opposed to the reverse. Look at the chemistry, change the chemistry, and hope that it then goes all the way to the top. Did I answer all the questions, or have I left something out?
No, you absolutely did. It's about the whole person, right? Absolutely. So thank you. Prince, I did want to hear your perspective as well, because you shared some very personal experiences, and sometimes when it happens to someone close to you, it might even be harder than when it is you, right? So how did it has it sparked sort of this whole self-exploration, either within yourself or people within your circle, as you looked at, really, being in a situation where you had people close to you really have catastrophic effects of depression and post-traumatic stress disorder?
Yes, Lauren, thank you. It's hard to follow, BK. I thought for a moment, like, okay, where am I? That's pretty deep, BK. So for me, it's something that I only faced and learned as an adult. So as a child growing up, everybody knows my dad. He was a strict disciplinarian, and he could cause you anxiety and stuff like that. And he did do some anxiety. He gave me a pretty good whooping too, on many occasions. But that never messed with my mind, just because, again, from the cultural standpoint, it was something that happened. So for me, the anxiety leading up to what trouble I'll get into was the thing that lingered. Beyond that, it was fait accompli, and you move on to the next escapade. But and so in a kind of happy-go-lucky attitude, you go through life and you just think that the way you are raised and the way you see the world is the way you are. So it's not even you don't search to find your real self, because nothing has triggered that search. And then you get this shock when somebody that's otherwise normal, as BK says, turns into some complete different thing. And it's not because they are impersonating that for entertainment. It's just because they've been transformed due to whatever trigger. And that's how I came into being. The light bulb going off in my head moment is when about 10 years ago in DC, I sat in my apartment, and my cousin called me and said, you know what, I want to come over, you know, my wife's brothers are out to get me. So I called the wife and I was like, what's going on? And she said, your brother has issues. He's hearing things. I was like, you gotta be kidding me, man. Hearing things? So this is a guy with whom I weathered anything that could be thrown at you in our days in Sukar. So we'd sit out the Hamatans and university strikes together for months with little to eat and any money. And we survived through that. The hardship of being away from home, not going to school, or having to deal with all those things. And this was somebody that I looked up to and I thought was a tough guy. So when somebody tells you that they are not right upstairs, and you're like, I dismissed it. And I said, you know what, whatever the case, you stressed out, come with me. You know, come spend some time over a week and we'll sort things out. And when he came, he was normal for like the next hour. And then we went out to have a drink, and he basically said, those guys are here. So some guys had walked into where we were, and I didn't know the guys. So I thought maybe those guys were some guys that he knew. And, you know, and so I was like, okay, you want to leave? He said, yeah. And we left. Okay, fast forward weeks later, and, you know, my apartment is like filled up with junk stuff, and the neighbors are complaining about missing stuff, you know, and it was on the 4th of July weekend. And I came home one day, cop cars were all over the place, and they said somebody's going around the neighborhood. There's a black man that's going around the neighborhood and pulling people's flags in their yard. And someone followed them and they came in here. And I was like, holy, you know, anyway. And that just did it for me. I thought, what did you just do? You didn't have to call them over here. What would I do? You know, would I call his wife? Would I call his brothers and sisters? And so, you know, it was very stressful to deal with that. But that was my moment of reality. That was my moment of, you know what, you really can't, you have to always look beyond what you see actually in folks. But I had to learn it the hard way, even though I had been informed by his wife that there might be an issue and stuff like that. And so, and the reason I'm on here, I really don't know much beyond that, except for the fact that I've had those real life situations. I never read about it, you know, but you hear it in talks all the time, whether it's TV, radio, community, and then the other situation. So I think that being part of this awareness to discuss it, and maybe to take it a step further, to be a part of somebody's social network, so that if they are going through treatment, they don't recede into what BK said, the cutoff when depression sets in. You know, if there is a window, if you call and checked up on people regularly, you know, you may be that persistent love aspect that inserts themselves into their lives and create a window out of that depression, you know. And so that's what this is for me.
Wow.
So, again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. You are listening to 25 push-ups for 25 days, and as panelists I've been told that we should not use any labels. A group of gentlemen who happen to have been to a certain college in Cameroon called Second. And today we are just talking about their experience. And it's been deep. We want to welcome Anthony Gaffo. Again, just for the sake of everybody, K-Boy, Pius, Anthony, and myself are classmates. That is not important anymore. We don't need to be talking about it. So, Tony, welcome. And
thank you.
There's a question that is on the air for, I think, K-Boy, you want to contribute. But BK, I have just one before K-Boy comes in. Are you a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist? I have the impression that you seem to maybe have some background or some training in that you have been hiding from people. So just that short, then I go to K-Boy before we go to talk.
So that's a very interesting question. So I've been called lots of things, and again, it speaks to this whole question of labels. As I told you, I always say to people, who I am is what you will experience of me. Give me a label at that time, and then we can talk about it. Because if I were to present myself to you as an IT specialist, which is what I do for my day job, you would find it hard. In fact, if you had known that, you probably would have thought twice before inviting me out here. It was probably a whole lot easier for you to invite me because you didn't have a clue what it is I do on a daily basis as a day job, what it is that puts food on the table per se, as generally people would attribute it. I would say I am pretty much a master of myself. I believe in enlightenment as a way to self-actualization. So how do I get there? Through a lot of introspection. And it's all about relating with people and trying to relate and connect with people on a deep level. You would realize that the world is in such a way that because of all the fears and all the anxieties and all the expectations, the pressures, we tend to relate when we want to get. And once we get what we want to keep and then isolate. We build all these walls thinking we're protecting ourselves from some demon out there, whereas we're actually hemming ourselves in, holding ourselves hostage and in bondage. And these are the things that we usually do not realize about ourselves. You don't get to know who you are until you start interacting with the next person who brings out all your weaknesses. And then you can either make it the world's problem, which is what entitlement is all about, and victimization or victimhood, or you deal with it, face it, look at it head on, see what growth opportunities you have, and you never know what you're going to discover about yourself. And if you take everything like that and in its stride, you come to realize that there is a path, there is a pattern that shows up. Now, my day job is IT, but I call that a talent as opposed to a gift. So if I apply myself, I'll do it and I'll do it well, but I won't do it as well as the person who's got a calling, the person who does it and they just come alive. I mean, I will do it, I'll get excited, but it doesn't mean I come alive. Now, when I do this, when I talk about this, I definitely come alive and you will see a glow. So that's how I came to realize that I am more of a people's person. And when I talk to people, they are energized, as you are energized. That's why you asked the question. You don't have to tell me that, I know. But then if you ask me how I know that, I can't tell you. I just know that I really reach out, and I try to connect. And when I connect, people feel at ease and in peace. And when they're at that place, energy flows through them. It's almost like whatever blockages they had, they start releasing, because then they open up and they understand better who they are, or they can tell me things about themselves, let me go places they would not let anyone else in. And because of that confidence, the confidence and the steadfastness and the discipline to go to those places they once feared, when they go there with a different mindset, they realize that whatever it is they were scared of in the first place was just a mirage. For those of us who lived in Buea, or who have visited Buea, this is back in Cameroon, way back in the day before UB, we know that it would get really foggy, right? And you would come out of the house and all you would see is fog. And you had one of two choices. venture into the fog, because all you could see, the visibility was what, about 5-10 meters. So you can walk about 5-10 meters. You've got two options. It's either you venture into it in faith and belief that you will overcome, or you stay at home and wait for that fog to clear off. And I'm sure you know you'd be waiting a good 6 months. But then what happens when you step out in faith? You walk 10 meters, you see the next 10 meters. You overcome those 10 meters, you see the next. So whatever it is that presented as an obstacle is really just a mirage. It's a figment of your imagination. And by contrast, if you saw those 10 meters and you started moving backwards, as you move back 10 meters, it's almost as if the fog advances 10 meters. So it feels like something's chasing you. Now you have to start running. And that's exactly how life is. When we see things based on our focus and our energy. So thought is energy, and energy follows thought. And nothing means anything until we give it meaning. So whatever it is you focus on, that's what you will see. And the meaning you give to it will determine whether or not it excites you or it depletes and drains you. Now, if it causes you pain, then you identify with it as something you want to avoid. And that's how we end up getting stuck in a rut. Because anything in life that reminds us of that particular experience, we avoid. So even when we're on our growth path, when we come across something that reminds us of that experience, we stop at that point and we make a U-turn. And then that cycle feeds on itself until we lose ourselves. Because at some point we get to know that this is not who we are and we're not getting where we want to go. And it's a difficult one. It's a conundrum until you get to talk to someone who can help you pick this apart, help you understand what your triggers are, why you've got those triggers, how you pick them up, when you pick them up, when you made these key decisions in your life that made you decide, oh no, this is never going to happen to me. It affects women a whole lot. For instance, well, you got good examples there. Take the abusive
one on the panel, so watch out.
Absolutely, without due respect, Lorraine, I'm sure you. Let me give you. Are you married, Lorraine?
No, I'm not. No.
You're not. Okay. If you were, then this example would have been really good, because then you would have the experience. But imagine, take for instance, the abusive wife. I know it will never be you. Nobody would dare, Lorraine. Come, geez, wow.
Come again?
Take for instance the abusive. The wife who has been battered and bruised in one relationship. They go out into the world and they're looking for a next partner. Who do you think they're gonna end up with? I mean, when they leave that previous relationship, they swear to themselves, "I will never ever find myself in this situation ever again." Now, let's do an exercise. To all of you, I'll give you an instruction. See if you can follow it. Don't think about a pink elephant. What's the first thing you thought about?
Elephant.
Exactly. That's the very first thing you saw, right? A pink elephant. So when we go around in life saying, oh, this will never happen to me, what will never happen to you? Your subconscious asks. Obviously, you have to give your subconscious an answer, right? Whatever it is you think and focus on, that's the energy and vibration you sync to. And so your subconscious draws and attracts that to you. So that battered wife goes out looking for a relationship. There's only one thing she knows: the abusive man. So when she sees the abusive man, that is all she knows how to deal with. That is eventually who she goes down with. Why? Because everybody else is a pretender. When the gentleman shows up, she doesn't recognize that character. He's pretending. But the abuser is a game player and a game changer, because he will go through the phase, he will go through the probationary period until she's convinced and puts her guard down. And then he shows his true face. Yeah. So she moves from one abusive relationship to the other. The other good one is this beautiful young girl who dates one guy in a group of friends. And she'll be telling me, BK, I think all men are the same. I say, oh, really? How many have you dated? So, well, I belong to this circle and I know they're all friends, but you can't blame me because I was desperate. But I dated 6 out of 10 out of say 20. So the question I ask them is, why do you think these guys hang out together? Well, they are alike. Exactly, you're correct. So what else do they have in common? They will share the same jokes. They will have the same values. They will tell the same stories. So over time, they become the same person. So you've dated the same person 7 times. You didn't date 7 people.
Right? Yeah.
So it's all about perception versus perspective.
Mhm.
So perception is what I see based on my biases. Perspective, for the purposes of this conversation, is a 360-degree view. I look at it from all angles. Your perception and my perception, I get a 360-degree view, and that's where the truth actually lies. But how often do we embrace perception for what it is? No, we're always stuck with, this is the way I see it. The other person is looking at it from their own angle. That's the way I see it. And nobody is budging. So you have got a conflict. And well, 3 years down the line, the lawyers are getting rich and running to the bank.
BK, I can swear to you that we are going to have many of these conversations. And to be honest, I normally don't have a pen and a paper during my show. I've already written.
I'll take notes.
I have, and everybody there is nodding while you are talking. I also want to welcome Asim Beng. Asim Beng says, "Oh, great topic. I'm on my 25th day of push-ups tomorrow." And he says,
Yes.
for the enlightenment, BK, I'm a woman working on market, so I'm sure that your stories did not apply to us. So before we come to Tony, you had a question from Lorraine about light bulb perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, for you personally, right? Because I think, K-Boy, you shared a little bit about recognizing symptoms in others, but maybe if you could just tell us a little bit more about the self-awareness and personal exploration light bulb moment for you.
Right. Okay. Without having to say, I feel like I'm on the spot, but the truth about this subject is that it's more personal for me than anything I could imagine. I have immediate family who have gone through different forms of trauma. And again, when I was growing up in Cameroon, I think it was at that moment when I was still a young kid, I kind of did not like the way, people who were suffering from these kind of conditions were being treated. Of course, being a child and against that society where there is because typically we have people at the very later stages of these disorders who would strip naked and you name it, and they walk around town and people would like even throw things at them, talk, and then always label them. Now I had one auntie who was a very successful lecturer in one of the secondary schools in Cameroon. Even and her husband as well was a lecturer, and she was a very bubbly character, fantastic, amazing, generous spirit. Now she comes to, used to come and visit, or we'll go and visit her, in Boya as well. And then I think she was suffering from a mental, one of the mental illnesses. Now, this is now when I finish high school, I go to visit her. Even in high school, I'm with her daughter in the same class. And then I go to the, of course, I knew that she was now not well, and she'd been, she's now in the village in Bali. My first visit to go see her in Bali, I went to the compound. Then I saw this massive ball chained to her legs. She was that. That did it. I just could not believe it. This is one character that I know from a different, from a different experience. And then looking at her at this point, and then but the thing is, you have a conversation with her because she's quite intelligent, right? And she's very normal. I know she's normal, but the society, the immediate surroundings, right, have vilified her to the point where she's been anchored. Anything she needs to do, she needs permission. Somebody has to come and take off that chain, or they'll lead her to do whatever. But she was chained to that post 24/7, more or less. When you experience that, and you realize that you're powerless at the time because you're only a child. You're powerless. You can't really do much. Because how would you start telling people in the village that, this is not the way to treat people? How would you, what chances have you got? What voice have you, how loud could your voice be? And that was just one. There are lots of experiences, family members, close, that I could start from now till kingdom come. So I know that it is something which, like I said, it didn't need any convincing for me to actually jump on this and say, you know what, the conversation needs to be had.
Absolutely.
So it's a very, very, it comes, I mean, like I said, I can't even articulate enough examples, but there are very, very close. If I start talking right now, there's another cousin of mine who was in the UK. I hadn't seen her since I left Cameroon. And then the first time I hear was in a party, somebody was telling, that this girl, talking about this girl has got this condition again. I said, they called the name. I said, who are you talking about? I said, is she in this country? They say, do you know her? I'm like, yes. And that's my, and to the point where the way they were treating her, even it is sad because even in this country where there's resources, right? But our own community, even our own community that we migrated from Cameroon and came here, it's like we migrated, we came here, we adopted certain values in this society, and yet there were some that we brought with us that we maintained, that kind of basically overwrite whatever instructions are there, in this other society on how to deal with certain situations. So again, she was treated in that manner, and eventually she went back to Cameroon. And one of the, to just make it as an example, one of the days, right, she was at home, right, and the next thing they hear, she's literally touched down their family house. Oh my God. She touched it down. Now, this is somebody who, when you're having a conversation with her, she recognizes, she knows you. She talks with you. She knows every single detail from back in the day. You can't turn around and say this person is, as the common word that nobody's used so far. If I dare use it, they use the word madness. Is it really madness, or are we the ones who are mad for not understanding and not being empathic enough to people who are finding themselves in this situation? I just wonder.
And yeah.
Tony, over to you. Welcome. And again, we're just talking about the 25 push-ups for 25 days. I don't know, what day are you on now?
I'm on day 10.
Day 10. So day 10, day 12. Pius, what day are you on?
Pardon?
Now I'm asking Pius.
Day 9 today.
So day 9,
I'm about 12, to go.
Lauren already finished.
So
you saying I'm day 12. I'm day 13.
No, day 13.
Don't give me an extra day here.
Everything matters.
So please tell us about your experience. Why did you get into this, and how's it been thus far?
I want to greet you guys, distinguished panel, and I'm sorry I made it late and I joined the show late, but I'm really impressed by what I heard so far from Banseka. That was very deep. From Lorraine, that was really, really exciting. The one person who introduced me to this program was Nix Fru. He lives in Washington, D.C. He's a classmate of ours. And before that, I've been doing my exercises. I always try to keep fit, to do whatever I can do. But I felt that this was a different way to raise awareness to some of the mental illnesses or things that we have in our community. If you can use something like the 25 push-up to create awareness, I think that it is something that is really, really important. And the reason why I decided to join is because I think that, I can join a voice that is bigger than mine to create that awareness in our community. Because, mental illness is something that we don't really, really, really talk about it in our community. When I was growing up, they would ostracize families because maybe a child is suffering from just simple autism or other forms of mental illnesses like acute depression. People never really talk about it. So we have a culture where we don't really share, we don't talk about these things. you know. And even when we come here as a community, we still feel like we don't want to talk about it because we feel like it's something that is not it's maybe shameful to talk about it. But I don't think so, because depression is something that can affect any person. You know, we can suffer from any kind of, it could be social problems, it could be financial problems, it could be just family stress, you know, which can lead to from one thing to another. So I felt that it was imperative that I joined this 25-day push-up as a way to add my voice to something that I think that we can make it bigger and talk about it in our community, you know. So I was really impressed when Nick asked me to do it. I never hesitated, because I felt that it's something that is larger than my voice. It's something that we can take it to the next level, you know, to create awareness in our community. So that's probably the reason I really felt like I really wanted to do it.
And like we say to all military people that we meet, say thank you for your service. I think we can also say thank you. And there are a few comments that I want to, let me get to the comments, and while Lauren is preparing her next set of questions. Judith Ballon says, mental health is a stigma that we need to eradicate. Education and exposure is key. Thank you, BK. And this other question, I'm very hesitant to say, but because I said I'm taking comments, Lambert, what day are you on? Actually, everybody knows that I've already finished my own part of this, isn't it? I've already done my own 25 push-ups, 25 days. In fact, it's just that I did not want to make it public. I don't want to put this on, on Facebook and all that. But I've already done, I'm on day 30 currently, but if you want me to give you the videos, I can bring that on. 18 then comes back. That's why awareness is vital. Acceptance is necessary. Understanding is also needed. I always tell everyone struggling with any form of trauma, depression, anxiety, is that it is our responsibility to let others, friends, family to know our condition, because it is our responsibility to get better and be happy again.
Wow.
Bamenda All-Stars Club, my dear brother, Dr. Anye, very important topic. I deal with this every day as a service member. He's a service with the U.S. military. Great job, Michelle. I think BK is bringing a different therapeutic perspective to PTSD. Biggest challenge is denial. AC Mbeng again, my son is autistic and we have been stigmatized, isolated, but I took it upon myself to raise awareness, to give voice to what is often regarded as taboo. I know that what we give a voice to has the power to heal us and change the world. So you see, this is, I mean, I want to piggyback on that. You know, that is a woman who has a child who is autistic. Within the community, she says it clearly, she has been stigmatized, isolated, but that has not, taken her out. And she has decided, and what you just said, Tony, is important. You want to use your voice to add that to another voice so that you can amplify this, isn't it? Make it louder and give that voice to what is often regarded as a taboo. Okay, and so AC, thank you very much for that. That is what we are here. That's why we are here this evening. We are all trying to give our voices so that each of these voices, when we put the voices together, can become one loud megaphone. There is help. There is everything we can do. This should not be a taboo in our community. It should not be. And that is why the push-ups, beyond the push-ups, and maybe Dr. Lauren, before I come to you, maybe the issue that we should address, again, Pius, I know, is very athletic. All of us know him. He used to be a goalkeeper, isn't it? So this is not something that is difficult for him, isn't it? He already has what it takes. So this is not a challenge, okay? K-Boy, you said you normally do these things, you walk around, so this is not really a challenge because you could do 25 push-ups. Dr. Lauren said before, hey, before now, she has really never done 25, but took that on. So it is not just about the push-ups. There is something beyond the push-ups, isn't it? That experience of amplifying that. And for me, K-Boy, one thing, BK, one thing you said is self-fulfillment. you know. And yes, we are doing they're doing the push-ups. It's self-fulfilling in a sense. But I really want to ask you to drill down. What do you mean by fulfillment? What is fulfillment? All of us claim we are looking for happiness, we're looking for love, we're looking for all these things. What is that? What is it that defines happiness or that self-fulfillment? And what is the difference anyways?
That is a beautiful question. I would hug you if you were here. And you see, that is where the conundrum is. That is where the confusion is, because there is a difference between. Before I come to that, I'd like to establish the difference between two other words, and these are wants and needs. When we confuse our wants for our needs and or vice versa, that is the beginning of a journey down a very slippery slope. When you confuse popcorn for dinner, you're inviting trouble. Let's come now to fulfillment and happiness. I'll define it within the framework of what I call gifts and talents. So all gifts are talents, but not all talents are gifts.
Wow.
I'll say that again. All gifts are talents, but not all talents are gifts. Samuel Eto'o is Samuel Eto'o because he lives and breathes football. It comes to him naturally. He doesn't have to make an effort. If I try to become Samuel Eto'o, because I have seen that Samuel Eto'o makes a lot of money where he is, but I'm not cognizant of the fact that I do not have those skills. And if you were to give me 4 or 5, 6 or 6 lifetimes, I would be 1/2 or maybe a quarter of Samuel Eto'o. If I don't know that at the back of my head, then I will spend my whole life trying to become Samuel Eto'o when I really was called to become a medical doctor.
Interesting.
When Samuel Eto'o plays football, he comes alive. He would do it for free. So the payment that you give him at the end of his game is more of that extra Zuschuss, as the German would say. So it is the extra bout of euphoria that comes as a bonus for something that was already its own reward while he did it. So you're paying him to have fun. But the next person who's a wannabe footballer will be playing football, struggling, stressing, straining, not really loving the sport, not being excited about it, but he's chasing money. So imagine a lifestyle or a lifetime of stress. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, you have to play for a month. So for a month, you're miserable, going through turmoil, stress, distress, duress, and you name it, all for that paycheck at the end of the month. And then you realize that you're using that money just to solve problems, because the more you have, the more problems will come to you. You got big money, you need to live in a safe neighborhood. Safe neighborhoods don't come cheap. Then you need to drive a car that represents or is reminiscent of your neighborhood. Then you need to go on a holiday to places that obviously are reminiscent of your identity. So you end up in a very stressful situation where you're keeping up appearances and you live your life for others and not for you. You just have to conform. What's the difference between fulfillment and happiness? So fulfillment is what you get while in the process of that activity that you engage in, because you love it. It is who you are. You are a natural when it comes to it. You don't need to think about it. You work intuitively, as in a problem is thrown at you, you know the answer, you don't even know how you got it. You sit up to talk about a particular topic, and before someone asks a question, you have answered it intuitively. I'm sure it has happened to every last one of you on this panel at some point or other in your life. Now, that particular thing, if you go back to it, that is your calling. Those are your gifts. You are a natural in that area. I'm not going to try to become a goalkeeper like Pius was. I'll be miserable. So now if I'm competing with Pius in that particular area, I would live a life of frustration. Why? Because I can only be second best Pius. It's like a nail trying to become a hammer. Good luck. That is a recipe for disaster. Whereas,
oh man.
So happiness, on the
This is
other
so cool.
hand, is what you get at the end of your endeavor. So that pay raise, what else? A promotion, a birthday present, that new car you bought,
The
and it
reward.
lasts what? If you're lucky, it lasts about 5 minutes or a day. Let's stretch it to about a day. And what's the proof to this? Go back to every achievement you've ever had in your life. You would realize that when you got it, at the end of that achievement, the next question you ask yourself, every last one of us, was, is that it?
Okay.
So you spend all that time to get something because you thought it was going to bring you happiness and or fulfillment.
Mhm.
But once you get to that place, it becomes your norm. Now, between you and I, if we saw Bill Gates in his private jet, we'll be thinking, oh my goodness, I wish I could be him. That is amazing. But guess what? To Bill Gates, that private jet is no different than your bicycle. It's just a means of transportation. Yes, true. He goes through his problems in style because he needs to get there really fast. But you and I look at him and we think, oh my goodness, he's ended. No, he doesn't see it because that is his norm. I'll give you all another very beautiful example. You're all breathing. Before I talked about breathing, did you realize you were really breathing? No. Now that I've talked about it, you're all aware. But when was the last time you patted yourself on the back for breathing? That was probably never. Now, when you go into an emphysema clinic, these will be people who are struggling with breathing. Then you get to appreciate what breathing really is all about. Now, if you were to stop breathing for about 2 minutes, what would happen? It's game over. But we take it for granted because it's not something that we do. It is part and parcel, an intricate part of who we are. And that is the difference. When you do something that is and defines you, it doesn't feel like you're doing anything. If you feel like you're doing something, it's not you. And there's a learning curve, that's true. But if you've been on your learning curve for what, 2 years, 3 years, and it still feels like a learning curve, it's time to have a conversation. Let's talk. Thank you.
Oh my God, BK, I will have your phone number because
I have to pinch myself every now and then to make sure that
Your life.
you know, it's like I lost my way today and I found myself in
You know what?
BK, I thought that was deep.
You know the interesting
I'm feeling the connection, BK. I'm getting here
just
that
touching on the
fulfillment is
last
enjoying the
point,
journey. Because I never really cared if I won a game. When I played, I never really cared if I won a game.
So
If I was able to make an important game, it was a big deal for me. I was in there to have fun and to come alive. So it really didn't matter to me. And so I was having fun the whole time. And I tell my kids these days, don't be under too much pressure to win. Have fun, just come alive in the game and enjoy it. You know, and it's amazing. You know, sometimes you get the win, which is the happiness, and you feel good about that, and then you wait for the next game. But how do you feel at the end of the game?
Yeah.
And I bring this up because I have an incredible story. Some of you guys can remember. There is a game, Sacred Heart, Longla, semi-finals, Osuks. We were in upper six. Batoko was keeping. We were down 0-2. They were beating us 2-0. It was 10 minutes to the end of the game. Batoko got out of the game. And all I could remember was like, God, I get to get into this game. You know, I get to play, and that's all. So I was going in there to go show off, have a good time, and just happy that I had 10 minutes of this game. You know, we ended up drawing in that 10 minutes and losing by penalties. I don't know how many goals I stopped. I was so dirty. Almost 20 years later, somebody that I couldn't recognize asked me if I knew them. I was like, no. They were a lesson. So they were like, I was classmates to your little sister, but that's not how I remember you. I remember that day at Osuks. And I was like, yeah, I was having fun. I have never made a connection to living with that. The reason I bring this up, BK, is not to show that off. Today, I made a connection with how certain aspects of my life had helped me live my life without even knowing that maybe it was therapy, it was just me, you know, some fluke of identifying, you know, what made me happy coming alive versus, or what made me fulfilled versus what I really didn't care if I won, I just wanted to play.
Pius, we ask that no more labels. This Sacred Heart game and all that stuff. You are getting.
I can't help it, Lambert. I can't help it. I'm sorry, man.
No, but again, it's part of the conversation, which is. I mean,
Thank you, BK.
Yes, and this is great. K-Boy, again, this would not have happened if we did not have a pre-show conversation last night. Just to be honest with you, we had this conversation last night, and K-Boy said the real person to get is BK. I really want to appreciate this because, again, it is a reason why we have this tagging on, isn't it? You are tagged onto something, and then you are nominated for something, and before you know it, there's a community. Okay, that's why we have this. I have some 2-3 comments here. Then we, Lauren, I come to you, please. I've said that about 3 times. But so again, Bamenda All Stars Club. I am and this is important to follow up, man. Maybe before Lauren comes in, BK, you can say something about this. I am a victim of denial after my deployment to Afghanistan. I was diagnosed of PTSD, and I refused the diagnosis until I went through administrative procedures to complete the protocol. Thank you, Michelle. That is coming from Divine Anye, Dr. Anye. That's a former national president, okay? Affirming how he's in denial. And he has to go through, and all of us are at different levels, and that's the point AC is making here. Denial is a necessary emotion in order to be able to reach acceptance, isn't it? You know about the stages of grief, and she names them there. They are necessary emotions, but it's a place to endeavor not to be stuck at any one stage, isn't it? We don't want to be stuck at just doing 25 push-ups. After 25 days, we are gone. And I've just put this on because it's not something that we talk about, isn't it? We can talk about different aspects, but this is one that is affecting our mothers, our wives, our women, isn't it? Raising awareness as well for postpartum PTSD in our community. Yeah. Lots of support needed for mothers facing this and not understood in our community. Yeah.
By the way, so I'm using labels, so my fellow labels.
Right. So, BK, you have anything to respond to that before Lauren takes over? And
absolutely. Was there a specific question? I just saw
it. Just about the denial aspect. You know, somebody talking about denial and how we move away from that denial. It's a stage we need to accept it. You know, yes. Most of us, not all, we live in denial. But how do we come to terms with that denial, and how do we move away? Not just come to terms, but move on from the denial.
Okay. So again, that is a beautiful question, and I would like to start by really honoring the person who asked that question. See, because that is where it starts. If he talks about it the way he talked about it, and we create a platform and we're open to it, then it gives him the courage. It gives him that assurance that we will be able to deal with it as a community, and it is not really his problem alone. Now, why is he in denial? It is because he knows that, historically speaking, if he were to be labeled with that, then guess what? His own community would consider him a failure, and he would see himself as a failure. What I want to bring to the fore at this point is the following. Every behavior that we exhibit is designed to do one of 3 things. It provides, it prevents, there's a third one. So there's provision, provides, prevents, and I can't remember the third one, but as I talk, if it comes back to me, then I will share it with you. So, but then for every behavior that we exhibit, there is a positive intent. And what you want to do is accept that emotion first as a part of you, because it is trying to provide something to you. It is trying to prevent something from happening to you based on the way you have defined that particular experience to yourself. Now, it is something that is going on with you that you do not want to face. And sometimes it trails all the way back to your childhood. We talked about triggers. So when you refuse a particular emotion, it is usually because you have decided that that emotion is a weakness, and hey, you are a strong man because you grew up hearing, be a man. Stop behaving like a girl. And all these are toxic. They are poisonous. These are some of the poisons that eventually take us hostage. You see, because when you start going through a period, through an experience which is difficult, one that you can't handle, what is your biggest fear? Fear of failure. And so you deny those emotions completely. I call it cognitive dissonance. You pull all those emotions to the side and you pretend it was not you. Eventually you forget about those emotions and you forget about the experiences that caused them. Now what happens? The particular thing that happened had a label. It could, for argument's sake, be, say, an accident. You were traumatized by that accident. You did not want to deal with it, so you forgot about it completely. Over time, the experience is gone, but the energy is stored in there somewhere. It just loses its label. From time to time, you get a trigger, and that emotion will come up, and you feel something in your body. You don't know what it is. It will typically happen to us, you know, on those days when you would say to yourself, I got up on the wrong side of my bed today. But you can't really put a finger on why you're in a bad mood. It is because there has been a trigger somewhere. It would probably be what you thought about the night before you went to bed, or something in your dream that served as a trigger, and you wake up in that state and frame of mind. So the actual feeling and emotion crops up, but you don't know what it is because it's not carrying its traditional label. All you're left with is the experience and the feeling, because it would have changed your biochemistry. And it is our biochemistry that translates into what it is that we feel, following the thought, feel, think, feel, and then act cycle. And so we want to go there and actually embrace it and ask ourselves, what is it we are afraid of truly?
Lauren?
More self-exploration and mindful. We're already on Mindset Boulevard, by the way, BK, right?
No, right?
This is what it is all about. Yes.
So it's interesting because you kind of really closed out with something that is great segue for my question. And, you know, I sort of wanted to ask everybody really about how do we break down barriers, right? Because one of the really big things, and I think Dr. Najela brought up the issue of PTSD, postpartum PTSD. That's a really great example because a lot of times in our community, people have, you know, issues and there's stigma, right? All the way from, you know, imagine having an autistic child, you're stigmatized for that, right? When people know what autism is, there's a scientific explanation. And then much less issues like panic, anxiety, depression. And then not to mention, again, if you're a person that everybody perceives as super successful, you're in a high position, you cannot absolutely talk about your depression or your issues, right? So we have a lot of barriers in our community. I think sometimes, I think BK, you talked about, I love the analogy of the fog, right? Where we want to stay in our safe space, right? People look at the fog and they go, this is too much. I don't want to go into it. I cannot see. So let me stay in this space that I know, which is safe. And we do that in our jobs. People do that. People stay in unhappy marriages because it is safe. You know, they think it's secure and then it's closing in, right? Like you said, it's almost as if the fog is following you. So we have all these barriers. Our default position is, I don't want to rock the boat. I want to stay safe. We don't want to talk about it. So, and what I loved about the push-ups, which is more of a symbolic outward example of a really big problem, is that for a lot of people, even people who work out regularly, being able to say, I will do 25 push-ups on video was making a conscious decision to take a risk and to break a barrier, right? I always share with people that for me, the most challenging part was the fact that I had to set up the video, make sure the video was right. At some point, it wasn't even the physical stress of the push-ups. It was just everything around. It was all in my mind, right? So a lot of people say, I cannot do 25 push-ups. Of course they can, but they have a mental block against doing it. So I would sort of like to just get your opinion, starting with Anthony, around how do we, you know, breaking down these barriers for ourselves within our community, really, again, ensuring that people feel we move away from stigma, right? We've all had personal experiences of family members or even ourselves or people close to us who struggle, and nobody really wants to explore the problem. And so now when people even start experiencing mild problems, they don't want to talk because they're just afraid to, again, break that barrier and take a sort of take a step forward and say, okay, what is going on with me? It's not normal. Let me pick up the phone and call somebody and talk to them. So what kind of encouragement, or even how do we change our attitudes, both individually and collectively, to encourage movement? So maybe we start with you, Anthony.
Thank you, Lauren. That's a great question right there. And one of the things, like we were talking, one of the things that we don't talk about is the stigma of what we go through. And I think that most of those things is partly because of the way we are raised from back home. Sometimes, back home, they always tell you to man up, don't cry. Say, for example, a family member passes away, they will tell you, oh, don't cry, it's going to be okay. Sometimes I feel like you have to cry. You have to cry to let out that negative energy.
Yeah, and
you understand?
You have to grieve. Yeah.
Yes. So I feel that it is imperative that we have a support system, because I think a support system is one of the things that it's very important for us to be able to deal with these things, and to be able to talk to people who will not judge you, who are not judgmental. Because a lot of the times when people say they have a problem and they come to talk to you, they're not talking to you because they think that they don't have a solution. They just want you to be able to listen without prejudging them or without labeling any stigma on them. So I think that it is imperative that we have a community that is supportive, that can say, you know what, okay, I understand what you're going through. I may not have the solution because maybe that's not my technicality, or that's not my field, but you know what, I'm ready to listen to you. I'm ready to connect you to a support system that will be able to listen to you and help you. So I believe that one of the ways that we can really help in managing this situation is to be able to create that support system, because you cannot fight the fight alone. Like I said, this challenge is bigger. It's bigger than all of us. It's the 25 push-up. It's symbolic, but I feel that there is something that is bigger than that 25 push-up, and there's something in our community that I feel that we need to really talk about it, create a support system for one another. So that's what I think, Lauren.
Oh my gosh. Yep, absolutely. Like you said, it's we are in this together, right? And we need to be able to create safe spaces. I especially love the fact that you brought up the point that sometimes when somebody calls you to talk to you, it's not because they want you to solve their problem. They just want you to listen and be empathetic, right? And they just want to talk, right? So
yeah, they just want to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
They just need an ear. They just need somebody that can listen without judging. Because most of the time when you're telling somebody something, they already have an opinion, an answer, or something that they want to tell you about. But if I come to say to BK, somebody who is really aware of all these things, and I'm like, BK, I'm having some issues. I don't want BK to start lecturing me on that thing. I just want him to listen and say, BK, Tony is gonna be okay. Most of the time I know what I want to do. So I'm coming to you just because I need you to give me that ear. I need you to just listen. Just listen.
Oh my God.
Without trying to educate me or talk. Because at that point, that may not be what I want to hear.
Yeah.
At that point, that I may just want to just listen and get some kind of comfort from you, because everything is a process, right? Because everything is a process. It starts with this, it goes to the next process, it goes to the next process.
Yeah. I love just listen, right? I think everybody watching,
yes.
Just listen. Sometimes,
Just listen.
Just listen. Yeah, we need to do more of that.
Because you know what they say, listening is people think sometimes that is easy. It's not easy to be a good listener. You see what I'm saying? To be a good listener is something that is very difficult, but a lot of people just take it for granted, think that is easy. But that's why they say to be a good leader, you have to be a good listener.
Yeah, go tell that to some of those people in Africa. But again, if I may follow up, Lauren, if you, the only problem, it's a great tool, a great way of articulating how to break down those barriers. But remember that we also live in a community where gossips are so common, isn't it? You have a great system, a great support system in a community, but you also have that fear okay, that I open up to this guy, and tomorrow I start hearing this from some other quarters, and I'm like, I thought I told you this thing in confidence, okay? So, K-Boy, how do you match the fact that we need to listen at the same time? How do I overcome that fear that if I open up to you, you are not a priest who has sworn any vow of secrecy, you are not going to release this thing. Okay. Yeah, I mean, and you said before that you have never been even an altar server. Why would I come to you with this? And I really want to share with you, but I have that part of it, and so maybe it's a call to the community too, to understand that people are going through this. They don't need answers per se. They just need people to be able to listen. And to be able to listen, you need that trust, isn't it? I don't know what your experience is with that.
Yeah. So when you talk about the community, sometimes you got to really try and identify or define which communities we refer to. The experience of us in the diaspora is completely, as a community, is completely different from anything that you could what we could have imagined in your wildest of dreams. When we migrated from back home and we came over here, you would find that the early people, I was just going to say the early people, no, the earlier migrants, right? Yeah, the earlier migrants from our societies, right? When they came over here, they were able somehow to create a unit for themselves, and they were really one strong community. They worked with each other. You'd find so most of the older generations in the diaspora, you find that they actually tend to know each other. They collaborate, or they had some kind of community going, even though a lot of them ended up, being married to people from different cultures and different backgrounds, but they still kept that core. Now, fast track the age of the economic migration. When this happened, you find a lot of people came here for their own interests. They've created their communities, they created their groups. So this kind of experiences people have, we talk about the support and being able to go to, because in real life, when you talk about your friends, we all have acquaintances, but how many people can count their friends on two hands? And confidential stuff, most of the time you want to tell it to people who are really your friends. This community we find ourselves in today in the diaspora, you find a lot of people are actually here, but their friends are not there. And if they really need a channel to go talk to someone, is very important. Like Tony alluded, we need to be able to have somebody who's a good listener and somebody whom you can confide in. And we take it for granted, but it's a very rare resource to find, because some people can let slip, when they don't mean to, in a public gathering, and the only thing they turn around and give the expression "I'm sorry" or something. But if you go back to our community, going back in Africa, we looked after each other. A problem, shared, right, was the problem that was more or less like half or even complete, because you had neighbors. We didn't grow up with wars. Today, unfortunately, that society is changing really fast. But we never had wars. Mm-hmm. We all had, my dad used to walk from one end of the street, right, just tie his wrapper around his waist, barefoot, and he walked from one part of the top end of the street and just talk. And every neighbor, and even when people used to move into your neighborhood, right? As soon as people moved into your neighborhood, right, we always knew the people they just transferred into this area. You just have a chat. Before you know the kids, you all get to know each other. You work with each, you start playing. It was so we had that support network. You could go and talk to people. You could choose people. You had choices of people that you could confide in, that you could talk to, and those Jangi houses and stuff like that. Over here, unless somebody tells you that there's a Jangi house going somewhere, you don't know most of the time, right? Thanks to social media today, things are changing really fast. things are changing for the better, in a sense, for the better. We still have that to deal with, but you know, unfortunately, if you had to look for people that you wanted to depend on, that they could really be there for you, you didn't have much to choose from, because they are not your natural friends that you have chosen when you migrated. You didn't migrate with your friends. You came as an individual. But if you have to fit in that community somehow, there's something that you have to give. Unfortunately, if you really want to be part of it, it comes with its own ills, and you just have to, you know. But we have, as a community, we need to do more. We need to talk. We need to understand. We need to empathize. And at the same time, we need to look for ways in which we can enlighten and educate others. You know, we need to take this conversation back home. We need to let people know that it's not okay to see somebody in the street who is naked, right? And we film it and send it on social media. That person also has dignity. That person has a family. That person has their, you know, they have their person. We have to respect that. We should be able to see things that you should be able to get. If you have a shirt, you can even take off your shirt and just try and cover your dignity and preserve them. Even, you know what I mean? Rather than sharing these things and then people are sitting there and laughing. I think it's something which is funny. It's not.
You guys do not believe we have been on for 1 hour 35 minutes. So let's spend the last 25 minutes of this so that the guys in the UK can go to bed. The IT specialist has to go to work in the morning, you know. But
hey Lambert, it is good. This is more important to me than anything else on the planet.
Thank you very much, Vicky. I want
You're calling, you know.
And I want to get back to the comment section, but remember the question that Dr. Lauren posed, Pius and BK, you still have to respond. But Gael, great topic. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. That's why I'm only saying Gael. Excuse me for that. Sylvie Agwe, based on our upbringing, feeling, accepting, and acknowledging our emotions are seen as a sign of weakness. Now we come into a society that strips us of what has played a great part of what we are, our societal connections. And here we are thrown into a state of denial. Great point. AC Meng, in the case of pre-postnatal depression, mothers need practical support, especially at home. Especially those in the diaspora, most women struggle because when that help is not there, they may end up suffering with burn effect and eventually leads to depression, etc. Agwe again, at Lauren Niba, thank you for bringing up the push-ups. I personally initially did not see value in it at first, but then as a healthcare provider who has listened to what my patients go through, I later realized that with each push-up video I post, I could tag positive messages related to mental health, just letting people know you matter. Thank you very much, Sylvie. I'm going to get, the next panel is going to be with women. AC back again. The community is large. Let's start from home. Immediate family members have an important role to play as our mental health is concerned. Exactly. Very important. I've been so with my boys. And because we are having this as classmates, just before two of you come on, be thinking about this. This is from our classmate, Philip Archer. And you can already start thinking, knowing what is happening. May someone tell me in clear terms how doing 25 push-ups raises mental health awareness among African immigrant communities? Is there a mental health emergency that is specific to that group? Don't waste your time. If your explanation doesn't establish causality between push-ups and mental health awareness, in your explanation, feel free to replace push-ups with an unfortunately in between quotation marks, wearing your wife's underwear or something equally ridiculous. That's Philip Archer. That's our classmate.
But then, it can only come from here.
I think that's a case study for us as far as we have to check his mental state of mind.
I think it's an important question. What is the causality between? I mean, we have been able to say he's looking at causality in a very direct sense, isn't it? How does this push up bring to that? But we are saying that's what Tony mentioned at the beginning. We all have been saying it here. All of us, we know somebody who has suffered from this. Some of us are suffering from it. We have talked about different things. The reason we are having this conversation is because of the push-ups. isn't it? If we did not have the push-up, have been calling me to talk about the Amazonian matters, we'll never have talked about mental health issues, isn't it? Tony would have been playing music, would have been talking about some music, some good things that he's playing. Lorraine would have been telling me about some good food, isn't it? You know, that's a specialty. Kmoi would have been giving. So again, there's some causality, but we'll come to that. Pius, over to you.
Yeah, and I think so Pius, well, I would love your input before we get to that. Right, and all I will say is life is not linear, right? So everybody who's looking for causality in everything in life, they're kind of doomed, right? You can't always connect the dots. So, but I'm sure we'll talk about that. So I think, Pius, as you're responding to the question, it's really tying a little bit more into what Lambert said about the fact that when people talk, they worry about trust, right? This whole issue about if I confide in somebody, are they going to gossip? Will they talk about it? And so, some element of that might always still happen, right? So how would you encourage people in our community, number one, not to gossip, right? If somebody entrusts, personal information, not to do it. But number two, because life happens, I always say life happens. Someone who has been hurt by gossip or, sort of their personal business going out, how do they kind of deal with that? Because sometimes it's going to happen, right? And we want to make sure that people then don't fold back into themselves because they become very paranoid or very worried about if I say something and then it gets out. Well, so what if it does, right? So what are your thoughts around that?
Thank you for the question, Doc. It's I think that we have a cultural challenge, and that cultural challenge is keeping our dirty laundry within the house. I think for me, something happened as I started nominating people. I could look at my phone and read out some of the reasons why people refuse to be a part of the campaign. I don't do that. I don't do push-ups. I don't do push-ups on Facebook and stuff like that. And it wasn't about push-ups. Maybe it's my wording, but I think when I define myself earlier as a happy-go-lucky guy, I don't take myself seriously. I don't think none of those people that think it's too outlandish to come and join this campaign are a big deal either. I think a lot of folks take themselves too seriously. Whether it's somebody worrying about this is beneath them, or that their medical, if they have an issue in the family, sharing it with people to get help and getting some ridicule in the process is too much. So they have to keep it. In breaking that barrier and in dealing with this, we have to have this conversation, which is why I can almost think that we may be dealing with a real mental issue in real time with the last question that Lambert brought up. Because if we don't talk about this, how can we actually take this from a taboo situation into a kitchen table conversation, a phone call conversation where I could reach out to Lauren? I would never know in my wildest dreams that in my dark moment, I could call BK wherever he is in the world. Now I know I have a resource that I can connect with. And we have to do more of this. And we're going to have challenges, whether it's people wanting to goof up and not do 25 push-ups and publish it for the world to see, or because I think that people may look at me funny because maybe I'm trying to get help with some issue that causes me to be depressed. So the more we talk about this and the more we educate people, so education will be the key. Unfortunately, again, culturally and part of this economic migration wave that we are all part of, we think we are big deals when it comes to what we are and who we've become and what we do, that simple things are beneath us, and we have to brush that aside, and understand that you can't take yourself too seriously, and that sometimes if you do, you may miss out on great help that's just next door. So education, I think a platform like this, what Lambert is doing and what we're talking about, the reactions that we've had is testimony to the fact that the more we talk about it, the more people will be able to share their own testimony. The more people will understand that this thing is out there. People have lived it. I mean, I talked about, I lost a brother, basically. When I went to Nigeria, I was lost. That just gave me an envelope. And I never, when I got to Nsukka, I found this guy and I looked up to him. He was like a big brother to me, even though we're age mates, and to see him struggle with this thing in front of me and to eventually pass away. And suicide, guys, just to veer off a little bit, you don't have to go cut yourself right away, shoot yourself, which happens and stuff like that. You could kill yourself slowly by engaging in a lifestyle just because you're in that state of mind. And the community boxes you in, and then you die slowly, which is a worse kind of situation than if you just cut yourself or shot yourself. And you see that happens in front of people, and you really can't believe it. So education, we need to be loudmouth about this. Be proud. I'm proud to be a part of the campaign. I'm not the fittest guy, but I don't feel that anymore. I mean, when I was nominated, I was goofing around with the kids and I sprained my wrist. I can't do push-ups the regular way. I have to either do them face down or grab onto something. I eat 25 push-ups for breakfast, but if you Lambert did not see my last video because I struggled to do 25 because I have a bad wrist, but I couldn't care less because it's not about me. If I showed off, it would be to get the message out so people can bring the different perspective. And I love Phil, but he's been a case from a long time now, and it's like 30 years. So
you hear that on the forum. So
So you just have to close out with that zinger, Pius, huh?
Well, hey,
yeah.
I must say,
really wonderful.
Pius is a very brave man to take on Phil in that manner. So I'm really looking forward to that exchange in the forum.
He's a happy-go-lucky guy, as he describes himself.
I love the dude nonetheless, but
he's a great thinker. So yes, Lauren, you want to follow up for BK or you want?
Yeah, absolutely for BK. And I just wanted to play back, something really important that Pius said, which is education, right? And education is sometimes a nebulous term, but that's what it is, right? So I love that whole concept, using our platform. I mean, Lambert is just doing unbelievable job, having this depth of conversation, talking about it. And if we can have more opportunities like that, this is all part of the education process. So, so really great insight. So we're gonna close out with you, BK, the other K boy. Kind of your thoughts. How we well, you're the expert around breaking barriers in space to talk about this topic in our community.
Yeah. So, Lambert, there was a question you said was pending and needed to be answered. Do you want us to revisit that first?
Which one is it?
I think a certain doctor said something. I thought you mentioned he asked a question which was still pending. I just wanted to check that that's not pending before we move on.
No, that's the one I asked you about denial.
Okay. Do you want to repeat the question?
I have to go back to it. Just go ahead and let me get back to. Must have taken a lot of water, then forgotten what that was. But I think it was more about. We talked about it already. I mean, the one that's pending is the one that Phil was asking about the relationship between push-ups.
Is there a pandemic?
And push-ups and mental health. What is I'm raising awareness. And is there a specific pandemic specific issue within the community that people need awareness? I think that's what Philip was asking. You know Philip very well, I think.
Of course. I know Philip. I know Philip wanted to Well, I mean, if to that, I would tell Phil that the answer is in his question because he's talking about it, and you articulated it so well, Lambert. That is the reason we're here. Now, if that is not the bespoke response to that question, I don't know what is. And to draw a parallel, if you want to catch a rat, you throw a mouse. Now, what is the relationship between, sorry, if you want to catch a rat, you use cheese, for instance. I would ask the same question: what's the relationship between catching a rat and that cheese? Well, it will draw that rat all the way home to you, which is pretty much what we're doing right here. People run 25K miles every day to raise awareness for cancer. So it is an activity that gets people thinking, it gets people active, and what's more, there's a bigger and a much deeper connotation to it, see, because this is a very dark and a gloomy subject. So how about you epitomize it by articulating and investing in something that is lively, health giving in and of itself, and a preventive measure? Because when you go and you're pumping those ups or pushing those ups, you're releasing endorphins, serotonin, and dopamine, and these are the feel-good factors. And what's more, a lot of the people who are actually engaged in this activity have an opportunity to come in tandem with community because they are suffering themselves, but there is no label across their foreheads to say, hey, by the way, guys, I'm depressive. So he comes in and he has his reason why he's doing it, because he's actually undergoing his own form of therapy. It is his only opportunity to join others in community. Why? He has been ostracized. But you and I don't know about that because he doesn't talk about it. And why doesn't he talk about it? There is no platform for him to express and or articulate his grief and or his pain. So Phil, if that doesn't answer your question, honestly, I don't think anything can.
I like that. It's very definitive.
Again, I can just say one thing, and let me pitch it in this way. It's a Latin phrase, and you all forgive me for I went to a seminary. We learned a lot of Latin, so I've tried to forget the Latin, but it's difficult. It's what is called mens sana in corpore sano, okay? Simply meaning a healthy mind in a healthy body, isn't it? So again, it is a personal experience, but beyond that personal experience, there is a conversation that you're starting. Everybody, each of us could have been doing this in private. Do the push-ups. You don't need Facebook in order to do a push-up. There are many people, and I said it before, many of us do different sporting activities in order to keep fit. But there's a particular reason why this campaign took this form. It became a social media thing. That is why words like tagging, nominating, were put in place, isn't it? Then you form a community, which is going to be the last part of our conversation. Where do we go to with this? Beyond this, what next, isn't it? But it is not just about that feeling good moment, isn't it? I don't just want to feel good. It is important that I feel good, but beyond that feeling good, you are bringing awareness to something, and it's something crucial. And yes, there is a big issue, not just within the African immigrant community, even back at home. Yes. Mental health is an issue. Something that we talked about in our pre-meeting yesterday. Tell me, when somebody has a depression in Bamenda, where do they go to? Where are they exposed with depression?
God help you.
Yeah.
Post-traumatic stress. How do you ever hear anybody talking about that?
You're on your own.
So again, it is an important topic, important conversations, and I wish we could go on and on. Lauren, you have something before I come in?
Oh no, I'm good. I'm just nodding and I'm accepting everything you're saying because you're spot on.
Right. So again, it is important for us, and there's, just a lot that one has learned this evening, BK. I'm going to get a one-on-one session with you, and just to because we had a whole panel, and I could not believe this show was supposed to last 1 hour. I'm supposed to be home, but it's gone for 2 hours, and I'm threatening to take a third hour. But again, it is because of the importance of the conversation. And I think that for each one of us now, let's go around. What is next? K-boy, you're on the 13th day, isn't it? When you finish your 25th, what happens? Tony, what happens? Pius, what happens?
Yes, that's a
That's a
very,
good
very
question.
important question, because when I embarked on it, the first thing, like I said, it was just the right thing to do. I think that's the first time people have ever seen me on social media doing any of those things. I don't really do social media per se. However, that is the only, I don't know what's Instagram. I've never ever been on Instagram. I don't know what it looks like. I know the name. I've never ever been on Twitter. I don't know what it looks like, but I know the name because it's always in the news. All these, the only thing I ever done is Facebook. What got me to Facebook, right? When I had my daughter, the day she was born, I needed to let people know, especially people from back home, that my child had been born. So the only way I could have broadcast a photo of the baby I went on social media, I created an account that same day she was born, and then I pasted pictures to say she's here. So without that, I wouldn't have. And so you ask me, going back to Phil's question, what is the relationship between push-ups on social media and this mental health? There isn't a relationship. There isn't. However, by you embarking on something and starting a conversation, you get people talking. When you get people talking today, I struggled today because I'm actually nursing a bad back, and then I have one of my friends, his younger sister. I've barely spoken to her since I left Cameroon, and even years before, we're talking about 30 years now. She comes on the page today and she says, "Why haven't you nominated me?"
Oh, wow. Wow.
Now, and I know she's a minister in the US, right? She's got a lot of following, and she said, "Is it because I'm a woman, or is it because you think I cannot do push-ups?" And that for me was like, whoa. Okay, I just said to her, "I'm sorry, but tomorrow I'll have to nominate you." And nominating her, I know that she's got a good following.
Yeah.
How do I know she's got a good following? I know a lot of people in the UK, right, who religiously follow her ministry, and they listen. So she's got thousands of people, thousands. So for her to ask me why I haven't nominated, and then I think that is something, and she can do that. And if her followers can actually see that, it gets to reach more people. Now, what next is the education that comes with it. The education, and following the education, because that education gives people, creates awareness. After the education and the awareness, what next? Concrete measures in place. Action. What do we do? Just talking about it and then ending in this Embu house it's not going to end there. It's not going to do it, because it's a real issue. There are people who are actually going through it, living that. So we need to actually start taking steps into what we can do in our community today in the diaspora. There's so many resources. There's so many professionals, top professionals, as well as self taught or like
gifted persons,
who can actually contribute to this project, right, and really help uplift our society, our communities. Because the more we get to talk about it and we get to start acting and then doing things, providing necessary services, it doesn't take long. If you got somebody in your family who's going through this and all that, you could have a friend or a brother, a colleague or a classmate who knows somebody who is a psychiatric nurse, for instance, or somebody like, for instance, okay, I didn't tell you guys before I asked you, and I said to you yesterday that BK could come on here. I have the luxury of having BK at my fingertips. Anytime I call BK, I know you talk. So for me, this is my norm. To actually, when I want to tap into that knowledge, into that wealth, that resource, he's available. He's always been available for me. So I know it's somebody that you guys, obviously, you didn't know that until today, but I've always known that. So for me, it was like, if I know he's my go-to man. if I need to talk about these things. But how many people have got go-to people like that? How many people? We need to create more go-to peoples. More go-to people. We need to create them.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think again you touched on some very important points there. That education, all of us have talked about it. That's the key of it, and going around social media. But beyond the education, you also mentioned action. You know, and I mean, there's a question that I'm going to ask Vicky at the end. I would like to have him last, not because I mean, I need therapy too, but not there. But this is where I think that the conversations will not end today. Beyond the 25 push-ups and 25 days, we need to now create this community of people who have done push-ups, isn't it? And take the conversation now one step further. Action, isn't it? What are the action steps we need to take, isn't it? In order to not just raise the awareness, but what are the resources within the community for people? So Tony, let's hear from you.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Lambert. You know, the person, I think the person who started this push-up challenge didn't know how far this thing was going to take him, or didn't know how far this thing was going to go in terms of conversation and in terms of creating awareness, right? I mean, you know, they say if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with people, right? You know, I'm looking at this challenge. You know, like I said, I always did my exercises. You know, I try to keep fit, but you know, I think that the push-up thing has created some kind of awareness, you know, about what is going on in our community in terms of the mental health issue. You know, it's not the push-up. There's not direct. There's not causality like Philip put it. There's not necessarily any direct correlation. But I feel like, you know, it's like sometimes when you want to do an advert, right? Like people who are in marketing, when you want to do an advert, sometimes you use material that it's kind of controversial, or that something that would make people remember, you know, that particular product. You know, so in this case, you know, we're using the push-up not as we're using the push-up as something that can help create awareness. You know, just the fact that you are nominating somebody, some other person is nominating another person. You know that, you know, it helps to build some kind of awareness within the community. You know, so I definitely think that, you know, it is important that we look at that awareness and talk about it. You know, so that when you have a problem like this, you know, you can contact somebody. You know, it's gonna be, we're supposed to be able to build after this, like you said. You know, it's something that is gonna be bigger than everybody, because I don't know what kind of structure that we're gonna put in terms of bringing people together. But I mean, the technology is always there. I mean, you know, this is just the foundation that we are laying. You know, trust me, you're gonna have a lot of people who have the expertise in this field, like the BKs, like Dr. Niba, you know, that will come in there and educate and enlighten people on topics like this. You know, I mean, especially back home as well. Like you say, you know, we are not sensitized enough on topics like this back home, because, you know, the fact that we always consider it, we think that it's a taboo and people don't talk about it. You know, it's about time that people start talking about these things.
Correct.
You know, and I'm not worried about, like Lambert, to go back to something that you said, I'm not worried about the gossip or whatever. If I have a problem, you know, I'm not going to live my life based on somebody's narrative of what to think about me. I something is wrong with me. I'm going to come to you and say, BK, you are the specialist. You know, I definitely have that confidentiality thing with you, because if I come to you with a problem, I don't expect you. There's no expectation. I don't think that I'm talking about my mental or my depression issues with other people. I mean, there's nothing I can do. I can't control. I can only control what I can control. I can't control how you react. You know, you see what I'm saying? So I'm coming to you with some confidence that, you know what, this is my problem. So I'm not worried about whether somebody goes and gossips. The thing is, I want a solution to what I am suffering from. You know, because I don't care whether you do what, people will always talk about you. I don't care. You can be the nicest person on this earth. Somebody will find something about you that they don't like and they'll talk about you. So I'm not worried about that. You see what I'm saying? I'm worried about raising awareness. Awareness is very important. Awareness is the first thing, because if you have a problem, you're not even aware that you have a problem, then you cannot look for a solution. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, I feel that, you know, it doesn't end with the 25 push-up. After the 25 push-ups, we need to find a way to further this discussion. And, you know, we will run with it. Other people will come on board, because it's a team thing. It's together, everyone achieves more, right? It's not something that you alone can find a solution to. You alone cannot fix it. You know, you would find a community of people that will come together, specialists in different fields that will come together and come up with better solutions than what we are even talking today. And so it moves on. It moves on. They say when you stop learning, you start dying. You see what I'm saying? So it's a learning process. You know, so I mean, that's my contribution.
Oh, Tony, thank you very much. And again, if you want to go fast, you go alone, isn't it? But if you want to go far, you go with
people.
Isn't it? Absolutely. Right here. You can imagine how far we have traveled tonight together. Isn't it? If we had the conversation background like last night, we would not have gone anywhere. But together, we are going places with this. I love the passion. Just listening to you and watching you gesticulate is a clear sign that there is a passion. You want to move beyond this, isn't it? All of us want to move beyond it. And you mentioned technology is also going to facilitate that a lot as a facilitator. And you can imagine having a BK who is an IT guy, okay, the facilitator, and also with the gifts that he has of articulating these conversations and bringing them. So thank you very much. And I hope that each of us beyond the push-ups is going to do something. Sorry, I know you have to run. So what next for you after this? What do we need to do?
Can I just quickly add before Pius, just a minute to build on what Tony said, right? Because as human beings, we have a bias towards action, right? You know, the first thing, there's a problem, we want to rush to quickly do something to fix the solution. But I think what I love about what Tony said was that it's really about collective discussion and just creating awareness. So let's not only think about beyond push-ups, what is the next thing or action, because sometimes we just have a band-aid solution, right? I think BK talked about the fact that sometimes that's why you have medication, right? Somebody diagnosed me, we are quickly looking for a solution versus just sometimes we need to be able to explore the problem. So I do want, you know, for all of us on the panel and even people listening, you know, if you, even as you're thinking about what to do later, if your only contribution is to keep talking about it, it doesn't necessarily need to be, okay, what is some specific action? Just the personal transformation and making this about, you know, mindful. That's why I love this whole idea of mindfulness and the Mindset Boulevard, because it's really about a whole life journey versus just doing things to say you're taking an action. So that's why I loved what Tony said, and I just wanted to add on to that as well.
Great insight. Pius.
Thank you, Dr. Lauren. I think for closing, it cannot be said any better. Maybe BK has a close that's, you know, can rival that. I'm just happy to be in the game right now, and I'm excited to be in the game. I'm not worried about the end game. I'm excited about this journey. We cannot get to a solution if we're not talking about it. So that's it for me. I'll nominate somebody on my day 25 that's close to me so that I can stay and still do this. And we're just going to keep talking.
Oh, thank you very much. And that it's a great thing. I mean, again, for many people, always thinking about the next thing can be too much of another stress factor, isn't it? After this, then what next? And I think it's a great conversation to pull back ourselves to say that, hey, even just, you know what BK said, when you have the nomination, you have had that award, it lasts 5 minutes a day. After that, you start thinking about what next. We may just want to remain in the moment and keep expanding and growing the conversation. Even within the conversation itself, there will be a solution. So thank you very much for articulating that. Yes, BK.
I don't even know where to start. I mean, I am so lucky. I count myself so blessed and elated.
I've been trying not to leave because I wanted to hear what you have to say. I'm 17 minutes late for my next meeting. So you better know what you have to say, man.
No pressure, Pius, right? Thanks for that. So I'd like to start by saying, honestly, I think I'm really blessed to have been in your midst today. It's really great to know that there are people out there who think about causes that are bigger than the self. People who understand that until you engage in something that is bigger than the self, you really don't get to find the self. We lose ourselves trying to find self because we lock ourselves in self. But when you go out there and you're serving a community, because you are part of the community, you are served in the process, and you don't get lost in this whole thing about what are my needs and what are my wants. Because when you're serving the community, you focus on the community's needs, not on the toppings, not on the icing on that cake. And that is what makes it amazing. So I'm going to start with the conclusion. What next? We're here on the panel. I don't see anything that stops us from creating that group, a community. Let it start with 5 people, because I believe it starts small. We continue these conversations. We create that platform where people can actually come join and ask questions. They are free to ask questions as themselves. They are free to ask questions as their cousins. We're not particularly concerned. We just want to give people answers and get this thing to a point where, like someone already said on the panel, which I really deeply respect, you get the energy flowing. And when you get that energy flowing and it is moving in a certain direction, people want to join your boat. Nobody wants to start a boat because it takes too much inertia to get it going. But once you've gotten it going, everybody wants to be a part of that program. That's the way human nature works. So, Pius, you said something which I think is just absolutely gobsmack amazing. You're just happy to be a part of the journey, and to that, I'd like to piggyback on that and say the following: we get lost in life because we think there is a destination and someday we will arrive, and that is our demise. The journey,
absolutely,
or the destination is the journey. So the day we arrive is the day, to quote Anthony, is the day we start dying. So I'm going to say that again just for the purposes of those who may have missed it. The destination is the journey, which means we never really get to arrive. And I want to give something to everyone who's on the panel today, and those who are listening, obviously our most prized listeners. And for those who are suffering with whatever it is, I'd say, where are you going? Because if you consider that talking to me or talking to that next of kin about your problem is more important to you, more painful than your destination in life, it means you have just told me you've not really decided where you're going in life. And I don't mean this in a bad way, because I love you. I'll give you the example that makes it clear and crystal. You will be wondering what you've been doing so far. Remember when you were a kid? Go way back then, before you started walking. You started out, you could just about sit, and I'm sure it was exciting, but it was not enough. Then you could creep. It got even more exciting, but it was not enough. You decided you're going to have to walk. Now notice, it doesn't matter how, it did not matter back then how many times you fell or stumbled. You kept trying until you did. It was not even a question in your mind that you would give up, because why? You didn't care what anybody thought. Besides, you were the center of the universe. Well, guess what? If you were the center of the universe back then, you are the center of the universe right now. You've just told yourself all these lies, wrapped yourself in this cocoon of self-deception and delusion. Yes, you've had help from your peer and your friends, or those who pretend to be your friends, who can't wait for you to fall so they can go back and laugh. But guess what? You are above that. I would say shed all those layers of doubt, go back to who you are. Now, guess what? If I said someone out here should volunteer, I've got a 6-inch needle. I'm going to prick you with it and squirt whatever is in that needle or whatever is in that syringe into your body. I need volunteers. Notice nobody's hand is going up. Question is why? Of course, it is painful. What if you had a medical condition and I said, okay, this is your cure right here. So I've waved my syringe with a 6-inch needle and I'm going to plunge it all the way into your chest. I bet you all be running, coming to me. Why? Because the pain that syringe will deal you is nothing compared to the life that you are trying to preserve. So if talking to me about your problem is more painful than where you're going in life, then just maybe you have not decided where you're going in life. And if you've not decided where you're going in life, let us backtrack and be honest to ourselves and just admit that it's because we don't know who we are at this particular point. So that's where it starts. Who are you? And how do you find you? When you find yourself in a place and a headspace where you feel like life has treated you unfairly, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? Now, if you feel sad, if you feel despondent, if you feel sorry for yourself, it tells you one thing. You're all about love and connection. And the first question I'm going to ask you is, who is it? Who has hurt you? And we'll take it from there. And if we can pick that apart, uncouple it, flip it on its head, we start finding answers. We will take you to that place of pain, that place you did not want to go. Walk down all those corridors, figure out what it is that is going on. And just by talking, as Tony said, just by me listening to you, knowing that you are in a safe place, you will walk down those corridors, resolve some of those problems, and come out of that journey not even knowing it was all fixed until you encounter that particular problem downstream and you realize it just doesn't bother you anymore.
Yeah.
Why? Because you demystified it, which is exactly what we're trying to do with this whole thing. We're giving this whole PTSD and the stigma that it has got a completely new facelift, a completely new identity, an identity it should have had a long time ago. See, I gave this example in one of my push-up sessions. I said to every last one of you who has got a home today, and those who are looking to have a home. Now, when you're in dire straits and in a undergoing on a financial tightrope, you have no problem going to the bank to seek help. The fact that you're poor is not a deterrent. Now, what about taking care of the golden goose? Because you are the golden goose. You would kill yourself to go to work so you don't get kicked out because you want to have a life. Mm-hmm. But when depression is threatening your life, which means without that life, you can't even go to work to make a living for yourself and the people that you love, you struggle and you die, you want to cope with it. So between you and I, what went wrong? When did you become your own worst enemy? Now notice that when you have a place that you're going in life, they always say obstacles are the things that we see when we have taken our eyes off the objective. So if you do not have an objective, you will see the pain and you will see the obstacles, and people will always try to drag you down. So let's start with your tribe. Who's your tribe? Now, these are the people who are going to prop you up. Now, K-Boy says, I'm his go-to person. Now, I know that he comes to me because, hey, I've got a friend in him. I didn't realize he had labeled me. In fact, now I will put a bill to that and have a meter start spinning. Maybe I'll become a millionaire and retire in 2 weeks. Who knows? And then I can make you my friend, and you two can talk to me, and we can recycle that whole process. But see, this is the beauty. This is the beauty of it all. It is the beauty of it all. We need to come out of that place where we are scared of ourselves because you're not afraid of anybody else. You are just afraid of you. Dream again. And that is all I would say. It's not about the people out there. It is about you. All the obstacles, all the challenges that come to you are coming to you to do something. Protect, provide, prevent. Protect, provide, prevent. So challenge that feeling, get to know yourself. What is it exactly you're feeling? I'll make a note, a mental note, and I'll come back to that in a minute. So let me just write that. So protect, Lorraine, can you just remind me? Protect, provide, prevent.
Yep.
Please hold that and hold me back to it. So I was talking about who we are, our challenges, getting to know ourselves, understanding our emotions. We've talked about sadness. When we feel sad, when we feel like we've been cheated or life has treated us unfairly and we feel sad, and it's usually typically because we want to connect. We're all about love and connection. We're all about our relationships, and there are lots of everyone on this platform, for instance, is that sort of person. When things go wrong, your first place or port of call is not anger. It is you curl up and you just want to cry. And for some of us, we want to binge eat. And for those who are trying to lose weight, by the way, and you're struggling, you've done everything that you need to do, and that weight is just not getting shifted. In fact, you've starved, you've fasted as an excuse to lose weight. You tick all the boxes, cut all the I's, dot all the T's. It's just not happening. Guess what's happening? When you feel like you're being cheated by life and you're all about connection, you curl up and cry, and what's the next thing? You grab that bar of chocolate, or you grab that beagle, or you grab that pizza, or you grab a donut. But when you're eating that donut, it doesn't count as food. Why? Because it serves a purpose. And you're wondering, what is happening? Get rid of those chocolates. Yes, I mean now, not tomorrow, right now. Find something to replace the chocolate. Go out and jog. And that is a positive way of coping with it. You see, because eventually you're trying to cope by eating that chocolate. Then you become overweight. You've created a new problem on top of the one that you already had, now 2 problems. And then depression starts, because then your friends start making fun of you. You're putting on weight, but to them they're having fun because they think you're strong and resilient. They don't realize you're dying on the inside. And this is where we need to be sensitive. Let's not assume that because people look strong and dandy and can cope, that it is so. When you see someone behaving erratically, especially within your community, when you see them all of a sudden out of the blue, they are lashing out at everyone, that is a cry for help. Usually the first thing we do is we want to shut them down. We don't realize that they are actually suffering, and they are really, really begging for attention. Where else would they go to cry? And they can't cry within their own community. Where should they go? We're out here in the wilderness, and we know about that all too well. Now, so what happens if you feel cheated by nature? So you've gone through an unfair process, and your first port of call is anger. What does that tell you about you? It means you value significance above everything else. You want to wield power and authority. You want to command. You want to control. What you fail to realize is that if you can control the self, the world is going to bend over backwards to be at your beck and call. But when we start losing control, we're afraid of being seen as not good enough. What do we want? What do we start doing? We try to control our environment and the people within it. So we lash out. At least when we lash out, there's that adrenaline which gets secreted. We feel like we are in control. It's the same rush we get when we're doing bungee jumping, or when we're doing some other crazy activity that releases us, gets our juices running. So we get that adrenaline rush, and we feel like in control. We are in control. We don't realize we're losing the very people we want to control. So if your first port of call is anger, it is because you're all about significance. You're all about power and authority. But guess what? If you want to wield power and authority, serve, and you will be elevated to heights you're not even ready to entertain. Lorraine, can you give me my words back, please? Where were we?
Sure, absolutely. They're imprinted on my brain, by the way. So they're protect, provide, prevent.
Exactly. So when we are in dire straits, when we exhibit any behavior that is unbecoming, that even we look at ourselves and we go, oh my goodness, BK, did you really do that? Every behavior's design has got a positive intent, so it is trying to serve you. So it will serve you based on your understanding and or interpretation of the experience you're going through. So it may be trying to protect you from something. That behavior that you exhibit, denial, for instance. You are in denial because you're trying to protect yourself from feeling or looking like a failure. If they put this label on me, then I can't become anything because everyone will look at me through the filter of this label, and I can't afford to become a label. I know the way this society works. Well, I've got good news for you. There are people like me and people like me all over, and we're going to be building this community where you can come and talk about your problems, and trust me, they will go away as long as we touch the wrong buttons, and as long as you're not afraid to face yourself. Because I'll hold your hand, and the rest of the team will hold your hand. We'll go down the nooks and crannies and dark corridors of your life, those places you haven't wanted to go in the longest time. We'll pry those doors open, pull those skeletons out, and burn them out in the stake.
All right.
And that will be the last you will hear of them. See, because you are just energy. This energy you convert into your emotions, which I call emotion, energy in motion. This energy in motion becomes your feelings, and it's a direct function or subject to what experience, how you defined the experience that you had. Was it good? you will have positive feelings. Was it bad? You will have negative feelings. And obviously, our actions take their rise from these feelings. So, who you are today and who you become tomorrow is a direct function of how you manage these feelings. And that's all it is, managing your feelings. When you get to a point where you can't manage your feelings, where you know you need to turn left, but you consistently turn right, you are going down that entrance ramp into the junction called perdition.
Mm.
And if we can stop you from going down that slippery slope, then guess what? Depression ceases to be your identity in any way, shape, or form. So the question I ask you, you may have had an excuse yesterday, today you don't have any. What are you waiting for? We're going to create a platform after this. It will be, in my opinion, and this is a recommendation and a suggestion, we create that platform just the 5 or the however many we are on this platform, and people will have the option, the opportunity to subscribe and become a part of that family.
Love it.
And we know that like minds will attract like minds. Now that will be our safe space, a place where we can just talk, a place where we can exchange ideas, a place where we can tell ourselves who the go-to persons in what particular area are, a place where we can actually feel like we were home away from home, because family is not the person you traveled from that other realm into this one through the womb through the vehicle called your mother's womb in. That is not family. In my opinion, family is the person who shows up. And you all know that you have a friend somewhere that you will turn to first before you turn to your family. So why are you still living in that delusion? These are questions we do not ask ourselves, because we come from a tradition where we have been fed a lot of hogwash and we take it, we do not question. It is about time we start questioning who we are, where we're going, why and how we get there, who we're taking along with us, because where we go and how far we get depends on our crew, your tribe. So who's your tribe? This is the time where you're going to have to share certain people in your life. And I'm going to share one thing with you, which is something that I do. I've got people on the panel who are, look, all these people share the same values as I do, which means after today, they're my best friends, whether they like it or not. I'm sorry. I'll subscribe to you all.
We like it.
Now I'm going to share something with you and the rest of the community here watching, which serves me. It may work for you, it may not. I don't claim to have all the answers, but I can only give you what definitely works for me. We talked about labels before, and the reason I don't do labels is because when I introduce myself as one thing, when I show up tomorrow as something else, you want to pigeon me into that other box. I moved on. What are you doing back there? Then I can't take you because all you see in me is this thing. Now, I bet you there are so many people looking at me and they're saying, no, be that BK, Dad. Yes, it is that BK. Because they don't know this side at all. And the only reason they don't know this side is because there was no reason for this side to come out. So I shut up and I stay in my little corner and I deal with the people who show up. And we travel that journey together. Am I making sense? So
BK, I never intended this show to go beyond 1 hour. We have been on for 2 hours, 30 minutes. Just listen to this. Just listen to the comments, because let it not be that I am the one, okay? What a brilliant discussion. Thank you so much to the panel. This is from AC Bank. And remember that AC Bank is in the UK with you guys. That means the husband is in bed waiting for her and she's watching a show here. There's a guy, Dr. Tanjo Fidel, this is an ex-engineer like myself, is in Cameroon, I think. The crisis, the paradox of what next. But he comes on to say this. The destination is the journey. I think for me, that is what I have taken in all this that you have said, BK. The destination is the journey. And that journey is what we have just started. And Dr. Najela Nukuna says, should be considered for Super Soul session. Lots of aha moments, BK. Protect, provide, prevent. Again, family is the person who shows up. So you can be sure that I'm showing up in the UK anytime soon. So again, just not to abuse our time and out of respect for each other, so that next time when I say let's come on, we should all show up again. Family is who shows up. So I'm considering, we have already established that we are going to create a platform. There's no taking, and BK has said we are all part of that family, isn't it? I really want to sincerely thank each and every member of this panel. Dr. Lauren, you don't know how much you warmed my heart accepting to co-host this with me. I really want to say a big thank you for sacrificing your time, making sure that you can come and share your experience with us. I want to thank my classmates, No Label. We're not going to anymore, but I want to really say thank you, K-Boy, Pius, Tony. I really want to say it has been a great conversation. Let's continue. It's just the beginning of it. And again, BK, all of us want to doff our hearts to you. And there's a reason why that problem has been tossed onto our laps, and why we have taken up the challenge for something that started off as just push-ups. We are going beyond push-ups now. You know, let what we have started here today live beyond us and continue to share this, so that our community, we can make an impact and change even just one life, beginning with ours. I am sure that each of us suffers from some form of depression, some form of stress, and we maybe need this therapy that we have had today, free. 2 hours, 30 minutes of my time, that's a lot of money that I would have made somewhere else, isn't it? But we have had this free session, and I really just want to say thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have been listening to watching 25 workshops for 25 days by members of our community who took up this challenge in order to create awareness. And from the awareness we have created today, it does not end today. We are beginning a new community, beginning to bring out these things and creating a platform where you all can join, and we all together, family is who shows up. And the destination, or is it, am I getting that right? The journey is the destination, or the destination is the journey?
The destination is the journey.
Thank you all very much, and have a good evening. Let's walk in the background for a second. Thanks and good night.
Thanks, everybody.